Hey, welcome back to the Pursuit of Happy Well. Today we're unpacking why motivation alone is going to set you up for failure.
We're Scott and Kristin Boss, and in this show, we talk about how to create a happy and well life. So let's dig into the topic of the day. Let's go.
Topic of the day, why motivation is going to set you up for failure.
Which really sounds kind of like I'm annoyed by that.
Say more.
Well, I just think it's like, what do you mean motivation's going to set me up for failure? Because everyone is constantly seeking motivation. People are motivation junkies, which I think goes with like the consumeristic ideology of, personal development. Everyone's always looking for motivation. But
we used to have this saying when I was a kid, and my mom's watching. She's probably gonna laugh. But whenever we'd pack the car to go on a trip, I'd always hear, "Where there's a will, there's a way." Just to make sure we can get all the luggage into the car to get on our family vacation. Have you heard that before? Let me know. Like, have you heard? Is this just me? Is this just a family?
Is that like the idea of like, if you want it, you'll do it? Like, what? Okay, first of all, what is that even supposed to mean? Where there's a will, there's a way. Like willpower?
Yeah, willpower.
Is that what that's from?
I don't know if that's what it's
now
from.
I want to like look up the origin of that statement.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. This is the idea of like willpower is all you need to get your goals, to acquire the, motivation, like you just got to have the will to get through it.
Yeah, I wrote a whole chapter about this in my book, Pivot to Purpose.
Pivot to Purpose.
Where it was just like, I'm pretty sure I had a chapter that said like motivation is trash. It's absolute trash.
Geez. Well, we're just going to jump right in. We're not even going to ease. We're just going to.
Well, are you here for motivation? Or are you here for change? Like, I think coming for change is different than coming for motivation.
That's true. Okay, so where do we hear most often this idea of motivation or willpower? Usually it's what time of year?
Oh, New Year's, for sure.
New Year's.
Yeah.
New Year's because why?
Fresh start. What's your New Year's resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like people making all these goals. Like, okay, this is the year I'm finally going to lose the weight, run the marathon. That's when everybody does like the Whole 30, the 75 hard. It's like my feed is flooded with all the resolutions or intentions of the new year. And what's funny is as we're recording this, it's
the
April.
Middle of the year.
No, but this is perfect. So where were you going to go with that?
Well, I was going to say, so when it comes to it, and I think maybe most people maybe know this, but the stat is that 92% of people that set a New Year's resolution basically fail or walk away from it.
Yeah.
Within how soon?
Oh, I think it's within 60 days. It's actually, I think it's sooner than that. I think it's by February because if you go to the gym, I don't like going in January because I'm like, all the noobs, which is fine. Like, I'm glad you're there. If you're there to like take care of yourself, that's a wonderful thing, but it's just usually really overcrowded. And the joke is, hey, if you just wait till February, it clears out because, life happens. The motivation wears off.
Yeah. Have you ever set a goal where you just were pumped? You were excited about it. Maybe you did all of these things within 1, 2, 3, maybe you got to day 5 and then just nothing. Crickets.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
You've had this happen before?
Oh, all the time. Well, not only that, but like, okay, I'm totally going to out myself here, but maybe my students that might be transitioning over to the show and listening might be like, oh my gosh, she's human. Thank God. But like, babe, how terrible am I about what's one thing? I'm always like, I'm going to do this.
Oh my gosh.
Hold me accountable.
The amount of times I've heard you're going to wake up early. Am I right? Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's terrible. It's so bad. Like, I only wake up early if like I have a flight departing in the morning. That is the only thing. I'm like, if I could just trick my brain into believing that I have a 5 a.m. flight, I might actually join the 5 a.m. club. But yeah, that is totally an area where I will like, even last week I went on ChatGPT and I was like, all right, coach me to become a morning person. Here's all of my things. And I was literally fighting with ChatGPT. And at the end it was like, yeah, you're hopeless.
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. But it was like, wow, I can see that you have some strong thoughts about this.
Wait, for real?
Yes.
But I just love my sleep. Okay. So enough about that. So yeah. So today we're unpacking this idea of why motivation sets you up for failure.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna offer some insight on what to do instead.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's a topic that we're going to be covering.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're doing this one. I've talked about it a lot in my last business, but I saw it over and over again. If somebody wasn't meeting their goals, almost every single time they would just say, I'm just not motivated, or I need to go get motivated. And so what they would do is they would go out there and go motivation seeking. Yeah. And that could be, so what's interesting is they're like, all right, they think the answer is, I need more motivation. So then what they do is they go listen to a podcast, read a book, play hype music, sit around. I don't know. But they would spend all their time.
A couple episodes you talked about this idea. And I think it was 2 episodes ago, you said, stop buying something.
Stop buying the planners.
Yeah. Stop buying the planners, right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, planners are great as a tool, but we have to stop reaching for them as if it's your Lord and Savior. Like the tool, the planner isn't going to do anything for you other than give you a cheap hit of dopamine in the buying of the planner and the setting up of the things. I know some people that get all their dopamine and their excitement in the setting up of a goal, but not in the follow through of a goal.
Ooh,
and
say that again.
Yeah, they get all their dopamine in the setting up of, the goal or the habit, but not in the follow through because there's no resistance in the setup. Like there's nothing in your brain that's like, don't buy the gel pens and the stickers and the color coded tabs. That's like our brain's like, ooh, this is so exciting, so fun. And it just adds to the dopamine. But when the resistance hits, when we actually have to follow through, that's when motivation is usually nowhere to be seen. It's not on call.
Yeah.
Motivation is not on call.
I think you've told me one time, I think it was you that said you really enjoy the process of like planning a vacation or a getaway. That there's something about that, the planning, getting excited about it, it gets you a dopamine hit.
Yes.
And so I wonder if it's similar in the sense of like people planning either to make a habit change or work out or start a business venture or whatever it is. And they get really excited about, buying the planners and getting these, the planning process.
Oh yeah. That's where all their dopamine lives.
And then when it comes to like implementing.
Yeah. Then think about what happens in the implementation. That's where like the resistance is. That's where you're going to have to actually feel the frustration, the annoyance, like you're going to deal with setbacks. Like, hey, I can set out my workout clothes the night before. I can set my Hatch alarm clock, which I gotta turn that back on because I actually really like it. But we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there.
Subject for another time.
But, I could set it all up. But then there is the morning of when the alarm goes off, there is like my brain is not thinking about the clothes that I laid out the night before. It's not thinking about like all the fun stuff I did in preparation for waking up. It's just thinking is I just want to sleep. So this is why, motivation often fails us because you tell me this all the time. We assume it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Especially with procrastinators. Like, I'll get around to it. Now, nothing motivates me quite like a deadline. That's a little bit of my ADHD. But there's also this idea of like, I'm just not feeling it today. And you've called me on this before. You're like, you're betting on, feeling motivated tomorrow. You're hoping that that'll be there for you. And it rarely is. So this idea of like, motivation. So if it's not motivation, then people think, okay, I just need willpower. Like if I could just I need more discipline, more willpower, which we see people do all the time. Now, there's an interesting study on willpower by Ray Baumeister. Do you want to talk about that? Because it blew my mind.
Well, it's the idea of this like ego depletion theory and the idea that willpower is a muscle, which means it can fatigue.
That's crazy. Right?
It means that your muscle, if willpower is a muscle in his idea, that means it can fatigue, which means that this idea of having motivation or willpower, believing it's going to be there, it can weaken, it can atrophy, it can tire. It also means that it can recover. Mm-hmm. And so there's something to talk about here in the sense of like when to lean into this, when not to lean into this.
Yeah. Well, the ego depletion theory is also that it's it's based on a limited resource.
Right.
Like you only have so much willpower that is available to you before it totally depletes. This idea that you could just, work your way through it, push your way through it. And I think this is where maybe some shame comes up for people where they're like, why can't I just willpower through it? They look at people who are maybe reaching their goals, getting up at 5 a.m., working out consistently, or reaching their business goals, whatever it is that you're doing. They see other people accomplishing it, and then they look at themselves and they think, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Something must be wrong with me. And then they go to like, I'm lazy, I'm not motivated, I lack willpower, I'm not disciplined. All these stories.
Or the one that I think a lot of people come up with in the shame cycle is like, I just don't want it enough. I must just not want this enough.
Could there be some element of truth to that though?
Yes. I think there's some element of truth to that, but I don't think it's to the extent. I think what can happen in that is a story, and what other people say to others is like, you got to figure out your why. That's the only thing you need to do. Just figure out your why. And I don't think that's the sole answer. Because I think sometimes we'll talk about, we're getting to this, but there's a lot that goes into that. Yes, a why is important, and that helps give you belief and reason, all that kind of stuff. But there's also other things that you can build around that why.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just, and I think I think that if it's just about the why, that's also going into just willpower.
Say more. Give me an example.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example.
That's a big thing to say.
Dang, call me on it. Well, here's what I mean by that is like, if my why is the only thing that matters, then if I can figure out my why being strong enough, then it's going to give me enough willpower to get through it.
Okay. So are you saying that someone could have a really compelling why? They figure it out. They could write it down. They can have the vision board, and you're saying it still won't be enough.
Yes.
That's a big statement, Scott.
I
have to sit with that.
Yeah, I think it's true. Because a why you can have a big why. I'm not saying that that's not important. I think it is important. That's, I think, a lot of reasons why we get up when we do. Gets us out of bed, whatever it is. But to accomplish and actually follow through with that, a why could always just be here. But in order for it to be lived out, there's got to be systems and things. And I think that's what we're talking about today. Okay.
All right. Now it's, as I'm really sitting with this, I'm like, wait, you're totally right. Because we could have a really strong and compelling why. I'm seeing that. I think I was really believing, no, if you just have a really strong and compelling why. But when I think about it, I'm like, no, you have to have other things that support that, because you're going to have resistance. And
yes,
I will say, having a compelling why that deeply aligns with you definitely gives you the leg up, but it doesn't solve everything, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just having systems doesn't solve everything.
Some people think it does. Like, if I just need the right systems, put the right systems in place, which actually is a great segue. So what do systems have to do with this idea? So if motivation doesn't work, if willpower doesn't work, I mean, it works very short term. It's very short term, like 14 days or less. That's what I noticed, at least with my students that set out on their own. Usually 14 days in, resistance hit, they were defaulting back to their old behaviors, not feeling motivated or excited anymore. So if those don't work, what does?
Yeah, so your why and your willpower matter. And I think they can get you through, like we talked about at the beginning, like a couple days, or maybe a rough patch or whatever it might be. But your systems are what are going to carry things on. And so this is the quote from James Clear from Atomic Habits. Is this idea that you don't rise to the level of your goals. In other words, you don't rise to the level of your whys.
Yeah.
You fall to the level of your systems. And so if your systems aren't in a place that are going to support your why, you're going to fall to what your habits are, what your day-to-day, what your go-to, what your ruts are. And that's why I'm saying, like, your why can be huge, but if you don't build things to support accomplishing that why, it's going to fall to what your day in, day in out kind of habits are.
Man, there's a whole nother tangent I want to take on that, but we won't. I'm just going to say it though. With this idea of like, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your system. I'm also the levels of your systems. Yes, systems, but also the level of your nervous system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like how you care for your nervous system. And so
Beliefs. There's a lot.
well,
There's a lot to
for
say there.
example, or it's like the level at which you see yourself in the world. You resort to the level to your identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can have your ambitions, your goals, this is what I want, but eventually you will default to, how you see yourself in the world, what your body believes is safe for you to have in the world. Yeah. So I think there's a lot to say there. So, okay.
Yeah. Well, hold on. So about this willpower thing,
Yeah.
before, if you're still like, no, they're not right. Well, let's think about this for a minute. So I like talking about things through the lens of fitness.
Okay.
Personally, because I think it's just very easy to apply. And so think about a day. If you have your day and you're like, man, I'm going to start working out every day. This is going to be something that I'm going to incorporate. And maybe the first, as you start this, the first couple of days, you're kind of stumbling into it. Maybe you've set a time and then life happens, right? And you have a busy day and things get pushed around and you miss a day. And then second day comes, and you're like, okay, I got it. I really want this. I've got my willpower. I've got this. I'm going to get back into it. And then the second day happens and another thing happens and something else sets your day off. So case in point, I tore my calf earlier this year, trying to get back into working out. And I had my first week, it was a Monday, and was getting my workouts back in. Started my workout and I got a call from the school. Kid's sick. I was like, oh gosh, kid's sick. Okay. I'm in the middle of my workout. So I pause the workout, go get my daughter from school, come back. And by that time the day was shot. Couldn't get my workout back in. So day 2. All right. Day 2. Well, she can't go to school because she has a fever.
Yeah.
Right. So she's got to have 24 hours free or whatever.
Yeah.
So my workout fails that day and on and on and on and on. Right. All these pieces. Now, maybe this isn't your story. Maybe your days are a little bit more consistent, but you're like, I'm going to set my workout to be at 2:00.
Yeah.
What do you think your willpower is like come 2:00 in the afternoon?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. It's less. I know if I'm not working out by 3:00, it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just because of
kids.
Yeah,
no.
not just because of kids.
It's my own energy. It's my own reserves. It's my own ability it's my own motivation, like the willpower.
Yeah.
It depletes. And actually, they say willpower doesn't just deplete like with time. It actually, you have hours in the day where willpower is strongest versus, lowest. Where, think about the people that are, for example, eating really healthy. And then 8:00 at night, kids are in bed. They're in the pantry wolfing down everything.
Cake.
Yeah, because the willpower, like they've been like depleting the willpower muscle all day long, and then next thing they know, there's a sleeve of Oreos gone, and they're like, "What happened?"
Yeah.
Willpower fails you.
I will say that is my Achilles heel.
No, it is not.
The Oreos. It is.
Okay.
But that's exactly right. So if you're starting your day, and especially if you're trying to do a really drastic change, it takes a lot of willpower to make that change. And so you're going to find it easier in the morning, earlier in the day to accomplish that if all you're relying upon is willpower.
Yeah.
But by the end of the day, you've had to use so much willpower muscle, if you will, it's fatigued.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if your systems aren't there, you're going to fall pretty drastic. I mean, if it's eating, it's going to be a sleeve of Oreos.
I want to play devil's advocate real quick for the person that's like, let's say it is working out. And they're like, the only time I have is right after work. Are you saying that I can't do that? And I would say, no, there's a difference between having a plan for the end of the day.
That would be a system.
Oh, there we go. There's a difference between a plan and then there's a difference to you keep kicking it off to the end of the day.
Yep.
Totally different mindsets there.
Yep.
So, okay. Talk about the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to wrap that up, the other thing was sometimes kicking things down the road is we just need to wait till we get motivated.
Yeah.
How often have you said that? I just need to find the motivation. I hear that phrase all the time.
Yeah.
Both in my head, but also by others. And it's about everything, whether it's running an errand, cleaning a room, getting a workout in, starting writing that book that you want to write,
Yeah.
reading the book that you want to read,
Mm-hmm.
changing the habit. I just need to find the motivation. Okay, first of all, how do you find motivation?
You don't. I literally sat in the gym parking lot yesterday for like 10 minutes in my car, being like, just waiting for the motivation to hit. And I was like, all right, fine. We just got to go in there. We just got to do it. But like, can you define a system? Because someone's like, what does that mean? Am I putting tech in my house? Am I like, what is a system? How does somebody set up a system for success?
Yeah. System is basically this. It's a process that helps you remove the decision-making process, the fatigue from decision-making.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to say about this. I think James Clear writes a lot about habit stacking, is kind of into this idea. But basically, you're trying to set yourself up for success, removing as many decisions that need to be made on their own and putting them together so it's one decision instead of many multiple decisions that empties your willpower, right?
Yeah.
That fatigues the muscle quicker.
So I'll give an example is when I started my fitness journey a couple years ago and I was like counting macros and I found counting macros to be very tedious.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how many grams of protein, carbs, you have to weigh everything at the beginning, you're learning things. And so it's quite time consuming. So what I ended up doing, and you kind of did the same thing, was once I figured out the macros for breakfast, I had the same breakfast every day for like 12 weeks. That was a part of systemizing. Okay, I know I don't have to now weigh, log, guess, start from scratch every day. I've now removed friction in having the same breakfast every day. Or, maybe for you, it's like, I want to stop eating out as much. I want to save some money. So great. Leverage AI, leverage ChatGPT or another AI of your choice and have it like, give it your grocery budget, give it like, hey, here's my family's preferences. Here's our foods, our likes or dislikes. Build me a meal plan that takes 30 minutes or less each day. Tuesday, I'm about to do this because we're gone 4 nights a week with sports.
Sports have started.
So I'm like, all right, I need something to figure this out. So I'm like, all right, how do I automate this and reduce friction? So I'm going to use Instacart where I can. I'm going to have AI build menus and I'm going to have things on repeat, have things on rotation. That is a form of a system. So super good. I love that.
Yeah. And another piece with that is also thinking about making your meals in bulk, right?
Yeah.
And creating easy breakfasts, easy lunches, and then you just have to worry about dinner. And then dinner just becomes the only meal that you're really having to decide during the week. And so, that idea of like making habits frictionless.
Removing the friction from.
And so for instance, like I take a number of vitamins in the morning, right? And so in the morning, I also have a juice thing packet that I use, prebiotic. And what I do is I put all those things in the same spot. And so I just know that every morning I make my coffee and then all those vitamins are in the same location to help me remember to take them all. They're all in the same spot. So I know that when I make, my morning prebiotic, my juice or whatever, that I'm then going to get my vitamins too.
Which brings us to a really great segue because we're going to talk about environment.
I think this is actually probably my most exciting part of this whole thing is like talking about your environment. We actually had a discussion in our free community. If you're in it, the Pursuit of Happy Well, it's our community on Facebook. It's free. You can join it. And we had a discussion about this idea of like creating an environment that would set you up for success. That's part of creating systems that are going to support your goals where you're not having to lean on willpower 100% of the time. It's going to support your habits. So environment, let's go for it. I love this
So the reason why environment is so important is because environment is actually sending you cues for your behavior. So this kind of goes back to James Clear, Atomic Habits, where, the habit loop is there's a cue, there's a craving, response, and then a reward. That's how a habit loop works. So when you think about your environment, you have to think about what cues is your environment sending your brain. So for you, where you go to have your morning coffee or the area you go first in the morning, you have your environment set up to where when I'm taking, not only that, but you're also habit stacking inside that environment. So you're like, in this environment, this is where I see my vitamins out. I'm going to go take them. Setting up environments for different habits. So for example, this is why they say it's so important to not do any other activities other than sleeping and
in your bed.
and other activities.
Oh my gosh.
What? No, it's important.
I mean,
In
you're
your
not
bed.
wrong. Yeah.
In your bed. And not bringing in work, eating, and those things in your bed, because that can actually create insomnia. They actually said that some people that have insomnia is because they were bringing in too many activities into the bed. And again, it's a cue where the brain is like, wait, what am I doing here? Am I working? Am I sleeping? So also with that, it's just how are you setting up your environment to send the cue for what you want to do? So for example, if you know that if you're a remote worker, if you work from home and maybe you have your own business or whatever that is your workspace set up to send you the cue that this is a workspace? Or is it also your catch-all space where all the unfolded laundry goes, where you do, hobbies and all those things? Well, that actually becomes a very confusing environment for your brain because there's not a single cue that's being sent to your brain of like, oh, I'm here to do work. This is why it's important to, go to different areas of your house and be like, I try not to work in too many areas. Sometimes I'll work in other areas just because my brain needs a different
environment.
I just need a different environment. But I know when I, am in my office, my brain's like, we're here to work. It doesn't really do anything else in there. I mean, it'll scroll when it needs a minute, but or just on the couch, my brain is more likely to understand the cue. We're reading, we're watching TV, we're cuddling, at the dining room table. It's like, we're doing paint by number, we're having a family meal or whatever else. So really you have to ask yourself, how am I setting up my environment to cue the behaviors I want?
Yeah. And I love this idea of environment. And then would this also go into like your pregame ritual? Would that be similar?
I think that's
to
more of a system. Don't you think?
It's a system thing?
Yeah. A pregame ritual?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that's a system.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like the idea of like dressing to impress?
That's a good one. I would say that's an environmental cue.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's sending a cue to your brain like, hey, I'm here to do this. Now, me personally, me, if I'm not filming, I'm in athleisure wear all day. Like I do that because for sensory reasons, it's just very comfortable. I actually work and perform better in athleisure wear. But some people are like, I carry myself different when I'm dressing different or whatever else. So yeah, I think that could partly be environment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's true. I think there's studies on, the way you dress does present to you both a cue.
Yeah.
And on how you show up or not show up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you're in an environment where you showed up not dressed well because you were rushed or whatever, I just think about it's that idea of showing up to an interview in your best does present a certain aura, not just to the person who's interviewing you, but even to yourself. We used to talk about this all the time, a little bit differently, but we talk about this when it comes to sports or when you're lifting weights. They have these ideas of mental cues.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a system mixed with an environment. And so when it comes to like a deadlift, making sure that you're cueing properly, there's certain cues that you remember, push the floor away, right? And that helps you in terms of engaging the right muscles in the right way to support the lift so you're not hurting yourself.
I think to add on environment and like cues and behavior, I remember there was a coach I worked with that encouraged their high-level executive who worked from home when they left their office to create like a end of workday ritual. Like, I'm done. Either they'd close the laptop, tap the top of the laptop, but they even went so far as to be like, hey, change. When you get changed out of your clothes, even if you're just going from like casual to casual, there's a cue that's happening in your brain and changing your outfits that I'm shifting out of this mode and I'm stepping into this mode. And I think, I'm not sure if maybe it's the same for men as it is for women, but I think women tend to be wearing multiple hats all at the same time. And so I think there's like something very refreshing to, at least for me, working is like where I can change and be like, all right, now I'm just going to be mom in this moment. Like I'm going to put on my mom hat, my mom outfit, and just be mom in this moment. And that's sometimes that just really helps me shifting out of that.
Yeah.
Shifting the energy.
So, okay. So there's a quote here that we have. It talks about this idea of environments, specifically about eating healthy. Yeah. And it shows that people are 3 times more likely to eat healthy when fruits are placed on a counter, so available, open, in line of sight, than if they're hidden away.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of an environment, and I think even a system supporting, so your willpower doesn't have to go find that, right?
Yes.
Instead, you've created the opportunity to run into it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So we've talked about systems. We've talked about environment. Let's talk about how to actually get these things to stick.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay.
All right. So I think this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
These are all great theoretical ahas, like, and we talk a lot about this in the idea of the pursuit of happy well, right? Where like we're consuming. So what we've just done is we've given you all the information, not all of it, but we've given you some information. You've consumed it. Oh, it's so insightful. Now we have to do the action part.
Yeah. How
do we get this to stick? How do we implement? Because this is where we see progress.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all we are is just what was the phrase? Did we say this on one of our podcasts already?
I don't know what.
About, what was it called? This idea of I'm constipated with.
Content constipation?
Yes.
I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast yet. But like one of my former students, she's like, I just have so much inside. I have so much information, tools, and resources and all those things. She's like, I have so much content, but I'm content constipated. I don't know how to actually implement it and use it. So I think we have people that are content constipated out there. They're like consuming all the things. And so the reason why we want to talk about building the habits that stick, this is like the habits that stick around when your willpower and your motivation is gone. It's your systems, your environment, and these simple things. Do you want to cover a couple of those?
Yeah. So one of them is starting small. How many of us have tried, this is part of the New Year's resolution. We want to change
everything,
50 things at once.
Everything. Yeah.
Right. Like, here's all the things, it's a new year. Or sometimes we don't wait till the new year. We go, okay, Monday's coming. First of all, don't worry about what day of the week it is or what time of year it is. There's always an opportunity to add something, right? But I will tell you that you add too much and things get either they fall off the wagon, you forget, or it's so much that you become paralyzed.
Yep.
Right? And so the key to all of this is to start small.
Which is really hard.
Make it so easy to say that you can't say no, right?
Yeah.
That it's just either kind of with the vitamins, right? They're put in the same spot. The fruit, it's on the table, right? It's so easy to say yes to this because you've created an environment and a system and you've started small.
Yeah.
So that whole, like, I remember when it was a couple years ago, this whole idea of like off the couch.
Couch to 5K.
Yeah. Couch to 5K.
Yeah.
But they broke it down into easy steps.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, sometimes we're like, I'm going to get out there. I'm just going to run a 5K today.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You have to take into account what is your current way of being.
Yeah.
Like if someone's like, oh, New Year's resolution, like if they're inactive and sedentary and on their couch every day, would it be wise to go and run a half marathon on day one? No, but we tend to kind of go at our goals that way and be like, go big or go home, or it's from a place of like, I'm so sick and annoyed with my current status that I feel like I have to do these big things because I'm so frustrated. But then we end up creating either injury, frustration, or whatever else because we went too big. And this happened in our community again. Someone was like, hey, I bought this meal plan to make my life easier. And, we really got down to, we kind of tackled, all right, what's your why? We talked about her, her environment, her systems,
current habits,
all those things. But then we found out like that she was trying to change too much. She was trying to change all the things. And because she was trying to change all the things, she was changing none of the things. And so this meal plan that she bought just sat there and she's like, I don't know what to do. And so we actually told her, we're like, start with just one meal, just breakfast. And she's like, huh? We're like, just start with implementing breakfast. And once you get that, then add the next thing. And this I like the idea of consistency first, intensity second. So,
ooh, I like that. Say that again.
Consistency first, intensity second.
Okay. Oh. Okay,
So
break that down a little bit.
let me break this down.
Yeah.
So somebody that's like, okay, let's say they are sedentary and they want to become more active. All right. So the person that's going for intensity is the person that's going to be like, I'm going to go run every day for 30 minutes, or they're not taking into their current account. So it's like, all right, first we're going to go for consistency. What makes it so easy you can't say no to it? I would say, okay, we're going to walk for 30 minutes every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Once we nail the consistency where their body now knows every day I go and move for 30 minutes, I'm daily walking. This now, great. Now that we have the habit or that time locked in, now we're going to change the intensity of it. So instead of it just being walking for 30 minutes, now it's going to be jog 2 minutes, walk 1, jog 2 minutes, walk 1. Okay, now that we have that locked in, now we're going to bring up the intensity here. So consistency first, intensity second. But most people are like, they try to do consistency and intensity consecutively, and they end up burning themselves out and quitting.
Yeah. Or they think because they are not doing anything, they go intensity first and they try to stay consistent.
Right. And then they burn out. They either get injured or they burn out.
And then day one, they've got a broken foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well, I guess I just set myself back 3 months. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, stress fractures.
Exactly. Right. So starting small, account where you are, go for consistency more than intensity. We've talked about habit stacking. So tying a new habit to an existing one. So if you're like, I want to incorporate more reading into my day, be like, cool, you sit down and scroll with your cup of coffee. And so instead of scrolling, sit down and pick up the book. Or for me, this isn't in the, maybe it is in Atomic Habits, but I can't be sure. I like to create rules, like habit rules. So when I was doing my 10,000 steps a day, I made a rule for myself, like if I'm scrolling, I'm strolling, where like we had the treadmill.
Like alliteration.
So it was like, hey, if I'm going to scroll, then I can stroll. And so I made this kind of rule for myself that if I want to scroll on my phone, I'm going to get on the treadmill and be like, sure, you can still scroll, but do it on your treadmill and get your steps in. So it's like, or, I want to watch TV. Cool. But I want to get my steps in too. Great. Bring your iPad down, put on your favorite show, get your steps in. So it's just like, and do it with something that's enjoyable. I would say the new habit that's maybe hard, if you can habit stack it with something that's enjoyable, chances are you're going to have an easier time sticking with it. So, and then lastly, celebrate tiny wins.
Yeah.
You have to be somebody who celebrates the process and not just stuck on like, well, what's the outcome? What's the outcome? When we're impatient for the outcomes, we tend to just throw the habits out and be like, it's not going fast enough. Why is this not working?
This is where I would say a why is important.
Yes.
Right. So not just celebrating the tiny wins in the sense of like, I did it, but celebrating the tiny win and the why.
Yes.
So for instance, I never want to run ever. I played soccer as a kid. I hate running, and all you do in soccer is run. But when it comes to my, I'm older now and I'm running on the treadmill and so forth, I don't think about trying to keep the habit of running. I think about how I feel afterwards, celebrating how I feel afterwards, and going to the gym, celebrating how I feel afterwards. And I will tell you this, there are certain habits that when you incorporate them, they are going to be very hard at the start, specifically when it comes to lifting.
Every habit is hard to start.
But what I'm saying is when you start lifting or working out, there's literal physiological hurts and pains.
All right.
That come in with being sore or whatever it might be.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if it's coming to eating habits, like there's probably some sugar dependency that you're having to, breaking through.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so all I have to say is like, sometimes there's going to need to be that push, but celebrating the win on why. Okay, what I'm doing today and changing my eating habits is going to give me the longevity to be around for my kids, to be an active grandparent.
Yes.
Right? Doing what I'm doing today is going to help my mind stay sharp. Right? Well, all these things, these are some of the whys you can get to and celebrating those tiny wins on how I feel after the fact when something's completed.
Oh, I literally tell myself every time I do leg day, I'm like, I'm doing this to get myself up off the toilet when I'm in my 70s. Like no one else is going to help me up. I'm going to be able to get up myself. Like I picture, I think there's something about like functional mobility that matters so much. Maybe it's our age because we're turning 40 this year. And I'm like, I'm just trying to not sneeze without throwing my back out. Like, I'm just trying to not get a crick in my neck when I shave my armpit. Like, I'm just trying to function.
Someone said to me the other day, I was at soccer practice. I'm coaching my son's soccer team this year. And, I started the year tearing the calf. And the first practice that we had this year for soccer, I rolled my ankle and I rolled it bad. And so I came to practice the next day, and the other mom was there. She's like, did you just turn 40 this year? Because I swear it's all downhill from there. Dude, some teenager is going to see this YouTube and is going to be like, what are these people talking about?
We're not their demographic anyways. The same for them anyways. Well, listen, friends.
Well, hold on. The last thing that we didn't talk about is this idea of putting identity into this.
Oh, okay. Let's end with that.
Let's end with that idea. So this identity-based habits. So rather than this idea of, don't just run, think about becoming a runner.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a study, I can't remember what book I read it in, but it talked about this person that lost a ton of weight. And it was simply because every time they went anywhere, before they ate, they would go, what would a healthy person eat?
That is from Atomic Habits.
Oh, is that Atomic Habits?
Yeah, he references that.
This idea of like, okay, what would a healthy person choose? Right? And so it changed the way that they looked at food.
Yeah.
And how they made their
decisions. They lost
decisions.
like 100 pounds that way.
Something like that.
What would a healthy person choose?
What would a healthy person choose?
Even when they currently were as they were overweight when they were asking themselves that question. So they were kind of asking themselves, if I were a healthy person, what would I choose? Versus, this is just who I am and this is what I want to do, know. So you really have to think about
willing your way into the salad.
Willing your way into the salad. I love salads. All right. So on that note, friends, okay, we talked about why motivation and willpower doesn't work. And it gets you started, but what keeps you consistent is having systems in place, having an environment that sends cues that helps enable the behaviors that you want to see, stacking the habits, starting small, being kind to yourself, identity-based habits, celebrating tiny wins. So take what we've shared with you today, and we hope that you don't continue to rely on willpower, because by the ego depletion theory, it's only going to get you so far. It's a limited and finite resource. However, when you build up systems, you're going to have success.
Yeah, so remember this, motivation might get you going, but systems will keep you growing. I didn't write that.
It's really good.
Hey, we're so excited that you joined us today. I hope you had some takeaways. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not a part of our free community on Facebook, we would love to carry that conversation on in there. And so we'd love you to join that, the Pursuit of Happy Well community. You can find it on Facebook. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.